My daughter-in-law smiled like a therapist and said I needed to give them space, then had a locksmith change my keys while my name was peeled off the mailbox. I didn't weep. I took a breath, pocketed my husband's watch, and let years of keeping records steady my hands. The next day in a quiet conference room, I opened a manila folder and asked the attorney to read one page the family had conveniently forgotten paper that speaks when people won't. That moment wasn't the end. It was the fuse, and what followed tested every boundary I'd ever drawn as a mother. Before I continue the story, please subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Sunday light slid over the cul-de-sac as if someone had wiped the sky clean. Sprinklers hissed along Ashcroft Lane. A mourning dove held one note on the cable line. I stood at the curb in my robe and Bram's old college sweatshirt hands in pockets so they wouldn't shake. The brick pillar that holds our mailbox looked the same, except for the pale rectangle where our name used to be. 40 years of envelopes came to that slot. Today, the space where Ellery once shined was only bare brick, warm to the touch, and quiet as a closed mouth. When Basil and I first moved here, the mail carried us into the neighborhood church flyers, pizza coupons, the deed with our names, corrected by a blue stamp. Bram's acceptance letter arrived folded twice. So did the notice from my mother's nursing home. Taxes, sympathy cards, jury duty. Life's ledger slid through that slot into my palm. I used to rub the brass plate with lemon oil because I liked the way our name winked in late light. Celine came down the walk in her gym set and a bone-colored cardigan voice tuned to what I call her podcast tone. Maris, we've been talking about the energy in the house, she said, palms open like a flight attendant. The kids need routine and space to process. Yesterday was beautiful and we want to honor that, but we also need a reset. She smiled the kind of smile that photographs well. Would it help you to take a little break? We can book somewhere restorative near the lake, maybe where you can breathe. On the porch table, a small tray held a driver, 2 short screws, and a zip-top bag labeled with my name in Selena's handwriting. She had not thrown the letters away. She had simply filed me. The clean rectangle on the pillar flashed like a fresh scar. Mrs. Ortiz from 2 doors down paused with her poodle and did the neighborhood thing, pretend not to stare, while fully staring. I placed my palm on the warm brick where the brass plate had lived. The brick did not remember me. That is the trick of objects, they stay, and sometimes that looks like loyalty. Bram hovered by the hydrangea's eyes, red but dry, both thumbs working his phone. "Mom," he said softer than he used to say it when a scraped knee demanded a bandage. "This is just for a few days. We're slammed with the kids and the insurance calls. You know how it is." He looked past me to the street to anything not shaped like me. "You still have your prescriptions. Do you want me to text Dr. Keller about refills? I can do that." I told him my pills were in the kitchen drawer where I left them. He nodded like he'd solved something. A white van eased to the curb logo in tidy blue Fort Bend lock and safe. The tech climbed out with a clipboard and the brisk kindness of someone who sees people on their worst days and doesn't add weight to the seeing. He set paperwork on the hood and asked, "Who's the authorized party?" Not rude, just the world asking its favorite question, who holds the key on paper? Celine lifted her chin the way she does when a waiter forgets water. "That's me," she said, reaching for the form. Homeowner Selene Hart. She wrote in tidy strokes, careful and quick. The cylinder slid free. Metal dust peppered the welcome mat Basil and I bought at a garden show. The spring we believed the rosemary might survive July. The tech offered the new key in a neat envelope. Celine signed, and he tested the lock. The knob turned with that clean new click that is both promise and verdict. "All set," he said, and passed her 3 keys on a ring with a plastic tab. My old key felt heavier in my pocket, as if metal could learn sorrow. I tried it because I am a woman who confirms what she already knows. It would not enter. "I'll need a week," I said, plain as toast. "There are papers and Basil's watch, and I won't be in anyone's way." Bram inhaled. Celine's smile held professional as a resume. "Maris, I really believe we should rip the bandage. We'll arrange pickup for your items so you don't have to carry all that weight. The kids, they need clear boundaries." She said boundaries the way some people say grace softly, as if the word can make kindness true. Mrs. Ortiz pretended her dog needed a second loop of the block. I counted 1, 2, 3 until the hot part of my hurt cooled enough to move. Celine kept going soft as a brochure. "If we clear space now, the kids won't be confused. We'll put your clothes in labeled bins. A short-term storage unit is already arranged." She stacked solutions like throw pillows until the seat disappeared. I kept my voice even. "I'm not a hazard." She blinked, returned to script. "No one is saying that. We just need firm boundaries and to model resilience." I nodded once. Boundaries work both ways. Mine would be written, dated, signed. Inside the front hall, Basil's watch lay in the ceramic bowl where he used to drop coins. I closed my fingers around it. Warmth lives longer in metal than in skin. The locket at my throat has a seam you find only if you look for seams your whole life. I touched it and felt the tiny give. Paper will speak when I ask it to. I put the watch in my pocket, took the suitcase I had packed between condolence calls, and stepped down from the porch. On the driveway, the sun began to warm the concrete. A blue jay scolded from the live oak and flew to the roofline. Across the street, Mr. Grady raised a hand, then lowered it the way men do when they don't know which side mercy belongs to. I rolled the suitcase to the edge because some thresholds you cross only once. My suitcase wheels clicked over the seams in the walk. The HOA bulletin still held last month's egg hunt flyer, a pastel rabbit pinned to cork. Basil used to grumble about dues and then show up early to set out cones. I breathed twice like the counselor said out until the world narrowed into steps I could count. The lock clicked and my old key died in my palm. The garage door rattled up and a folding chair with a taped label, "Guest," was waiting for me. At the edge of the concrete, my family held a house meeting, and my seat was the cheapest chair in the room. The garage light hummed. 2 tables made lanes between bins. Keep, donate, sell. The air smelled like cardboard and fertilizer. Bram stood with his arms folded, eyes on the oil spot by the freezer. Celine set a folder on the table and lifted her chin. "We're doing a reset talk," she said, voice bright. "Simple lanes so no one gets overwhelmed." She pointed at the bins. Green for keep, blue for donate, orange for sale. No hard feelings, this is about moving forward. Neighbors' shadows hovered at the open door. I sat in the chair marked guest on a strip of tape and kept my back straight. "How long is the storage unit paid for?" I asked. "And the sale date? 90 days prepaid." Celine said, tapping the folder. "Soft open next Saturday. The kids can run lemonade. Great learning." Bram's phone buzzed. Across the garage, Tess's tablet chimed, then Jonah's. My own phone lit Ellery Family Chat. A gray banner slid across, "You've been removed from this conversation." Another ping. New group created, household only. Celine peeled a label without looking up. I set my phone face down. Not a scene. Not here. I reached for a shallow photo box I'd labeled years ago in blue ink, "Family Early." A neon $5 sticker grinned on the lid. I peeled it. The glue tugged a corner of the top photo, a Little League team in orange shirts, Bram gap-toothed beside Basil. Beneath it, Basil on the pier with 2 fishing poles. Under that lay a hospital bracelet paper, thin and stubborn. "It's not personal," Selena said smoothly. "Pricing helps the kids let go and learn value. We can scan what matters and put the originals in a memory book. Clutter is heavy. They matter because they are the originals," I said. She slid the box an inch toward the cell table with 2 fingers. I lifted it into my lap. No tug of war. Ownership lives in posture. Bram shifted his weight. His wedding band clicked the table leg like nervous Morse code. Tess and Jonah drifted closer, pretending to check stickers. Jonah touched the bracelet photo. "Is that me?" he whispered, as if claiming himself might cost extra. "That's your father," I said. Bram blinked at the floor. Tess leaned in. "Grandma, keep the one where Grandpa's holding me. I want Mom to remember he did." "We're on a timeline," Selene said, checking the clock. 30 minutes for personal items, then we move into binning. We'll arrange pickup for the rest so you don't have to carry stress. One afternoon would be humane, I said. I'm not asking for space only to separate what is mine. 30 minutes, she repeated, voice pleasant. We have to model follow-through. I slipped 3 photographs, Basil's pier, grin, the bracelet, Tess on his shoulders, into the inside pocket of my cardigan. The paper warmed against my skin like a kept ember. I kept my movements small. Children remember tone. Outside, a neighbor coughed. A breeze lifted a sticker sheet. 3 orange circles skated across the concrete. A typed schedule listed sort, closets, hall dresser, call habitat. I read it once. The sticker sheet flipped in the breeze. 3 orange dots skated over the slab. Mr. Grady paused on his walk, lifted a hand, then thought better of it. Inside the clock ticked like a metronome for someone else's tempo. Do you want the Afghan from the den? Bram asked too casually. It has my stitches, I said. We worked quietly. Celine narrated to the kids about resilience. I chose my small pile, Basil's watch box, 2 letters in his blocky hand, a recipe card for pecan pie he insisted was mine, though it was his mother's. Each choice clicked into place. When Celine reached for the photo box again, I kept it in my lap. Tess's eyes went to her mother, then to me. Grandma's keeping that. She said solid as a fence picket. Fine, Celine said lightly. Pick-up window, I asked, standing. The tape on the chair tugged at my skirt. If you text me the time, I'll meet whoever you hire. Tuesday 11 to 1, she said. We'll stage boxes at the curb. Please don't ring the bell. The kids need quiet. Thank you, I said, because I remember who I am, even when other people forget. Tess brushed my sleeve. Grandma, yes, honey. Can I come when you look at the pictures? I want to hear the fishing story again. You can, I said. Stories don't count against storage. Jonah grinned. And the one where Dad lost his shoe in the outfield. That one, too. I closed the box and held it flat against my ribs, secure, not hidden. I slipped Basil's watch into my purse and took the handle of my suitcase. The guest chair scraped the floor metal feet, protesting their purpose. At the threshold, a delivery truck rolled by. Mr. Grady lifted his hand from his walkway and let it fall half-mast. A damp breeze wandered in. Celine's stickers winked from every surface, orange, blue, green. Text me if you need anything. Bram said the sentence people use when they don't know what help is. I will, I answered. Mercy is not making a man say more than he can. I stepped into sun. Heat lifted from the driveway and met the breeze. The box was steady under my palm. I didn't look back. A strip of neon glue clung to my skirt as if it owned me. On the dining chair in the living room, a paper sign weighted the word, guest, stuck to my back like a joke. I felt the tape tear a thread from my dress the moment I sat down, and someone laughed before they remembered who I was. The sound snapped off, followed by Bram's soft cough. A placard guest was taped to the chair back like a name tag. I pinched an edge and eased it free. Another hair-thin line lifted from the fabric. I settled my spine and folded my hands on the linen runner. We're reframing this as a reset, Celine said, bright and brisk. She set out sparkling water and a repurposed funeral tray, rearranged to look intentional. We're lightening the house and protecting the kids' nervous systems. Grief is heavy. We need space that breathes. Bram nodded at nothing. On the sofa, Tess and Jonah hunched over a tablet volume low, already practiced at adult quiet. When I adjusted the chair, another square of paper dragged against the fabric. A second guest sticker clung to the crossbar ink, already ghosting onto the weave. I peeled it slowly and set it on the table, adhesive side up, a small mirror of what had been decided. The refrigerator motor deepened, then eased. Celine's phone lit with a photo of our front walk azaleas in bloom, Texas, sky faultless. She angled the screen toward Bram. Draft caption, she said. We covered all funeral expenses, starting fresh for the children. Likes gathered under a preview. There was no mention of me. Should I post, she asked, voice shaped to sound reasonable. Bram pressed his lips and looked past me to the window. I slid a manila sleeve from my handbag and rested a narrow strip of paper on the placemat cashier's check stub paid to Fairway Funeral Home, dated last week memo line in my handwriting. I did not point. I let it sit. Celine glanced down, then flipped her phone face down as gently as a Bible after church. "That's not what this is about," she said. "Money isn't the point. If you need to count, I said low count everything." I tucked the sleeve away and cinched the clasp. That sentence would have to be enough. I would not perform accounting in my own living room. "We're all raw," Bram said quickly, standing and then not moving toward anything. "Maybe we circle back later." The children looked up at the word circle as if a game might appear. "Have they eaten?" I asked. No one answered. I reached for the pitcher. Celine moved first, smile affixed. "They're fine." Through the window, Mrs. Tran paused with her stroller and pretended to adjust a blanket eyes sliding to the fresh wreath. The house looked like a listing photo, pillows, karate-chopped coffee table, clear, not a coat in sight. My heels showed a scuff from the church steps. The pulled thread curled at my hem like a small question. I set my fingers on the chair back to steady the tilt inside me. Tess touched my wrist. "Grandma," she whispered, "can I come over to your place tomorrow?" She didn't know there was no place. Not yet. Soon, I said and tasted the promise I would have to build. She nodded, satisfied by the shape of the word, and went back to her dragon. Celine refreshed her screen, watching numbers climb. "People have been so supportive," she said to no one. "It's good for the kids to see community." The sticker I'd left on the table found a beam of sun and glowed. I stepped onto the porch for air. The doorbell's camera glowed its red dot. A breeze carried cut grass and the thump of a basketball down the block. I smoothed my dress where the ink shadow from the sticker had bled. In the sidelights, I looked like a woman who knew how to do hard things without announcing them. My thumb found the thin seam of the locket. Paper, I thought. Deeds, signatures, dates. Paper speaks without raising its voice. When I came back, the glasses sweated rings. Bram stood at the window, palm on the sill. "Mom," he said, not quite turning. "We're trying to keep things calm." "I can be calm," I said. "Calm is free." I slid a coaster under his glass by reflex. Old habits do not argue, they serve. "Grandma, do you still have the fishing picture Jonah asked eyes on the tablet?" "I do," I said. Celine's eyebrow rose a millimeter. "It's mine." Ownership isn't volume, it's posture. And I kept mine. The sticker's glue, left facing up, collected a crumb. Celine reached to toss it and paused when the adhesive tugged. She laughed once brittle. "We need to watch the kids' sensory load," she said. "Labels help." "They do," I said, "when they're accurate." Her eyes met mine and slid away. "We'll post later," she told Bram. "After naps." Bram's shoulders lowered a fraction. Relief can be that small. Machines hummed. The only thing that mattered now was not to spend myself on a scene that would make the neighbors lean closer to their blinds. "Will you be okay tonight?" Bram asked. Which is what you say when you've already chosen not to know the answer. "Yes," I said, because I would be, and because the alternative would change nothing. I picked up my handbag. The manila sleeve pressed a thin stripe against the leather from inside a quiet spine. I took my box of photographs from the console where I'd set it, and the weight steadied me the way a book does when you know it's ending, but turn every page anyway. On Celine's screen, the we covered everything post went live, and the house applauded a story I didn't recognize. By morning, I would be in a neon-lit motel with a cardboard box of photos and a business card that said, "Civil Clinic Walk-ins. Welcome." I chose error over argument and walked to the elementary school with 2 permission slips in my purse and the photo box under my arm. Sunday light made the glass doors look like water. Inside the hallway smelled of crayons and disinfectant. Fluorescence hummed above a Kindness Week board. My shoes ticked across wax in small, steady beats. Paper before feelings, I reminded myself. Past the cafeteria, a woman in a PTA shirt pushed a tub with her shoe while balancing paper plates. "Are you with janitorial?" she asked, friendly, distracted. or picking up leftover trays from the reception? The question landed soft and sharp. I shifted the box. I'm their grandmother, I said. Color climbed her cheeks. She pivoted to banner talk and tape that wouldn't stick. I let the moment pass. Not every correction needs an audience. At the front office window, a clerk slid out a date stamp. I pressed it and watched the ink fix itself like a small verdict. Want to add another contact, he asked. Sometimes the system drops the secondary. I gave my number and spelled my name slowly, the way you do, when your presence has been treated as optional. He thanked me for coming in on a Sunday. I said showing up when no one expects you is a habit that keeps you alive. In the parking lot, a father buckled a toddler without looking muscle memory doing the thinking. I set the box on the passenger seat and breathed until my hands stopped shaking. The neon glue scar where a $5 sticker had torn the lid felt like an insult with a long echo. I pressed my palm over it. Cardboard warms if you ask it to. US 59 carried me south. The sun slid along the dash and lit the nick on my wedding band. I sorted a week Social Security on the 3rd, cash on hand, gas enough if I planned, one room paid nightly to keep my options, keep receipts flat in a folder, keep a pen that doesn't skip, keep faith with paper. When your face is unwanted at a table, a record still stands. The Sunset Motor Inn crouched behind a wind-tired palm, its vacancy sign stuttering pink. Inside the counter smelled like coffee and bleach. A woman with silver hair looked up from a crossword. "How long you thinking, honey?" she asked. "Night by night," I said. "Quiet if you've got it." She slid a registration card. Her tag read, Ruthie. I paid cash, set my ID down, kept the photo box tucked close. Ruthie didn't read my name aloud. She copied it, then held my gaze a beat, a small human pause. "Second floor's quieter," she said, and handed me a key on a sun-bleached tag. The room met me with an AC growl and a desk with a pen that worked on the second try. I set the box on the dresser and opened it like an altar. 3 pictures took their places along the mirror, Bram at Little League dust on his knees, my husband on a pear-red drum bending the line, a hospital bracelet curled like a ring beside a Polaroid. I squared the edges with my fingertips. The quiet grew useful. I called Bram. Voicemail. I hung up before the tone. I called Celine. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave words that could be forwarded or edited or ignored. Instead, I texted Tess a heart and a book emoji and laid the phone face down. On motel stationery, I wrote 3 lines USPS certified mail, executor appointment, bank box. I folded the list small and slid it into my lockets pouch. If family won't hear, paper will speak. Night lowered itself outside the blinds. I lined up my wallet, phone, and locket on the nightstand like 3 witnesses. The envelope from the funeral home came out next. Paid, not posted about. Paid. I traced the stamp total with the back of my nail and felt my breathing even. The room's smallness helped. Nothing could get far from reach. The ache had a name now, not rage, not pity, but vacancy chosen on purpose, a patch where a plan could stand. Sleep came honest. Then a truck downshifted on the highway. The photo box rested pale on the dresser, a square moon. I counted to 20 the way I taught Bram when thunder made him small. I pictured Tess in the garage whispering, "Keep the one where he's holding me," and promised her again without sound. The promise settled like a coin in a jar. A soft knock, 2 beats, and a pause. Ruthie stood with towels and a small bottle of better shampoo. "Your AC sounds like my cousin's Buick," she said, setting them on the chair. She tapped the box lid without prying. "Civil clinic," she added, sliding me a cream card. "Walk-ins, welcome. They're kind. No advice, no pity, just a direction." "Thank you," I said. "Names matter when your place doesn't, so I used hers." "Thank you, Ruthie." She nodded and left me to the quiet I'd asked for. I set the card under the box lid, then pulled it back and placed it where the lamp could find the print. I could see the door held open a receptionist who spelled my name the way I said it, a clipboard that didn't judge the hand that held it. Paper, not performance. Facts, not posts. The card's edge caught the lamplight, and for the first time in days, the room felt like a plan, not a punishment. Morning thinned the motel curtains into pale tissue, and I woke with the kind of clear head that follows a decision. I washed my face in cold water, set the photo box on the bedspread like a passenger, and checked the locket's clasp. I didn't text anyone. I wrote the room number on a card for myself, a breadcrumb, and drove toward First National with the radio off so I could hear my own sentences form. Banks make time behave. The foyer smelled like lemon and ink. Miss. Patel, her hair pinned back and her voice courteously neutral, compared my ID to a signature I had written before Bram had his driver's permit. She laid a leather pad on the counter, and when I signed the heavy pen, steadied my hand the way a railing does on a stair. She pressed a button. A small green light winked. "Well, bring your box up," she said, as if it had waited. The vault exhaled when the door turned. The attendant rolled box 412 onto a steel table, like a narrow coffin for paper. Years had scuffed its sides. I folded my coat and lifted the lid. The dry scent of old envelopes rose, and with it a steadiness I recognized from tax seasons and budget nights. On top lay the ledger I started 40 years ago, columns I drew with a ruler, my small script noting rents, received shingles, replaced dividend checks clipped with a rusting staple. Nothing dramatic, only the arithmetic of care. The pages did not tremble. Under the ledger, a tabbed folder, cream paper with an old-fashioned title, Addendum Life Estate. I placed the ledger to my left the way a pianist sets a hand and opened the folder. The language was not poetry, but it read like dignity. My name. My husband's name, the property description, the phrase for, and during her natural life, a notary seal pressed so hard it bruised the paper. 2 witness lines inked in a steady blue. The date fell in a year when Bram was still in college. We had signed at this very bank. I checked the page numbers, then lifted my phone and took 4 photographs, corner seal signature, the final line. I returned the pages to their sleeve and set the folder square the way you set a picture frame when you want it to stay. Beneath the folder lay a long envelope with my husband's handwriting slanting across the front, Maris Keep with the house papers. My breath shortened, not with grief's choke, but with respect. I opened it along the old crease. Inside one lined page. "You insisted on peace of mind," he had written. "You were right. I am not always easy, but I will not have anyone turn you out of what we built. If there's a day you need this, let it speak." He had underlined speak twice. The habit made me smile in the cool air. I stacked what mattered into a slim packet, the ledger's summary page. The addendum copy, 2 receipts for property taxes paid from my account when Bram was out of work, and we didn't tell anyone. Miss Patel returned with a form for certified copies. We set an appointment for Thursday. "Keep the originals in the box," she advised. "Carry only what you need." I have lived a life on that sentence. At the public library, the quiet has its own clock. I took a carol by the window and asked Mr. Lee how the copier liked to be treated. He laughed and showed me the temperamental drawer. I printed 3 sections of the Texas Property Code that mattered and highlighted the lines about unlawful lockouts and life estates not being gifts but rights. I built a 1-page index so I would not fumble if anyone tried to make my age a trick. I pressed the staples flat with the back of my nail and slid everything into the manila folder. I circled the date on the motel notepad and pressed the paper hard enough to emboss the page beneath it, a promise made in graphite. The civil clinic's auto reception answered in a calm, recorded voice that reminded me of nurses in recovery rooms. Walk-in hours Tuesday morning. Bring identification proof of residence, any relevant documents. I wrote 3 questions on motel stationery notice requirements, certified mail wording, Ellis Pindens, feasibility. I added a 4th what to say when people talk past you. Back in the room, the AC clicked on and shouldered the day to the corner. I put the envelope on the table with the motel pen on top like a paperweight. The photo box stayed on the dresser, a small altar facing a television I did not turn on. I texted Tess a heart and a book. I did not watch the dots. I made 2 piles, show and keep. In show, I placed the addendum copy, the ledger summary, the tax receipts. In keep, the note in his hand, the older photographs, the original locket receipt that still smelled faintly of talc. Near sunset, the phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize, a neighbor kind in the way people get when they are watching something they want not to be part of. Just so you know, the text read, "There's a realtor sign in your yard. No name." I looked at the words until they stopped being a sting and became a step. I did not answer. Some things do not get the dignity of a response. They get a document. I set the life estate copy on the top of the show pile, squared its edges with the envelope, and breathed the way I do when fastening a bracelet steady, small, sure. I placed Ruthie's clinic card beside it, aligned with the corner of the table, so the edges made a right angle. The order steadied me. It was not vengeance. It was gravity. Paper would speak. In the morning, I would carry a packet that weighed more than a door. The clinic smelled like copier toner and coffee, and the yellow pad between us was a promise I could keep. Kiana clipped my intake to a board and pointed me toward a cubicle where Mr. Duarte waited. He didn't rush. He read the packet I'd built, ledger index, the addendum, the photo of the yard sign, and underlined life estate, and lock change. My breath evened, paper not pleading. He wrote 3 short lines in block letters, then slid the sheet to the edge of the table like a say only these when pushed. He said, voice low enough that I had to lean in. Please proceed. I'll defer to counsel. The documents speak. We rehearse tone, not volume. No sarcasm, no heat. Just a steady cadence a judge could hear without wincing. He circled notice requirements and added in the margin, USPS certified mail with return receipt. My hand copied everything as if I were back in night school, taking notes that would change a life. We set an action list, draft a notice of occupancy rights with statute citations, send it certified to Bram and Celine, prepare a list pendants template in case they pushed a sale, keep every interaction in writing, do not argue on porches. He offered a sample line to realtors' direct inquiries to title. There was a recorded life estate interest. I repeated it until it sounded like a lock clicking. He shook my hand and said, "You're not alone. You just need the right nouns." Outside, March sun lay flat over the sidewalk. I walked back to my street and stopped where the grass met the curb. The new for sale post sat plumb in the lawn I sodded last fall, white arm holding a brochure box that clicked in the breeze. I took a flyer. The price sat in heavy type as if bold ink could make the house forget who paid for the roof. I photographed the sheet, the post, and the date on my watch. I didn't knock. Documented. June McBride opened her door before I touched the bell. "Come in, sugar," she said, ushering me past a stack of seed catalogs. The cold glass of water was already sweating on a coaster. "You should see something." On her tablet, the doorbell camera window waited. She tapped, dragged the timeline back, and there I was in miniature, my garage, my box, my daughter-in-law in workout leggings. We watched the clip. Celine swung my photo box toward the curb like it weighed nothing. A lid popped. Papers fanned to the gutter. "We're clearing dead weight," her voice said tinny through the mic. I didn't move. June paused, then looked at me the way a nurse watches a patient's face after bad news. I put my hand on the chair to keep it from shaking. The anger wasn't hot anymore. It was cold and clean like a scalpel laid on a tray. "Can you use this?" June asked. "Yes," I said. "If you consent, I do." She clicked share, typed my email, and waited for the little arrow to turn blue. I read a 1-sentence permission line I drafted from Mr. Duarte's template, and she signed without her hand wobbling. "Your husband fixed our fence in '09, she said. "He wouldn't like this." "No," I said. "He would not." Back on the sidewalk, the brochure box clicked again. I dialed the number on the sign and left a voicemail that could live in a courtroom. "Please direct all inquiries to title I said. There's a recorded life estate interest affecting possession. A notice is en route." I left my name and number and hung up before my temper could rummage for adjectives. At the motel desk, the clerk loaned me a stapler and 2 green certified mail slips. Ruthie passed a roll of clear tape across the counter and said nothing beyond, "Take your time." In my room, I built the packet the way Mr. Duarte had taught me, notice of occupancy rights, on top statute citations bolded like street signs, the addendum copy behind it, then the ledger index and a short transcript of June's clip with timestamps and camera model. I made 2 sets for Bram, and Celine slid them into Manila. I practiced in the mirror. Please proceed. I'll defer to counsel. The documents speak. The sentences felt awkward in my mouth at first, like shoes not yet broken in. Then they started to fit. I lowered my voice until it was steady enough to lay tile by. I wrote the realtor's number on the yellow pad and boxed it in. I noted the certified mail tracking codes, copying each digit twice to keep my nerves from transposing numbers. I tucked June's consent under a paper clip with the clip transcript. I added a sticky note that read, "Realtor voicemail left 3:22 p.m. The order calmed me. The room with its buzzing light and rattling AC became an office I could afford. Night came quick. Traffic on 59 softened to a far hum. I ate the motel apple, drank tap water, and set the 2 envelopes by the door with my keys on top so I couldn't leave without them. I checked my phone, no reply from Bram, none from Celine. I didn't text the children. They didn't need the sound of grown-ups fighting in their heads. I stood at the window and looked past my reflection to the strip of parking lot and the neon that blinked like a tired heartbeat. I thought of the yard sign of my name pulled from a mailbox of a $5 sticker that tried to price a life. I thought of the vault's breath and the neat pressure of a notary seal. When grief tried to lean on me, I leaned back with paper. Outside, a realtor's brochure rattled in the evening wind, but on my table, the words that could stop it lay squared and ready. The clerk stamped the certified labels 2 firm thuds, and the sound was louder than any argument we'd ever had. Ms. Boyd slid the envelopes back beneath the glass with a nod. I confirmed the addresses Bram's office, Celine at the house, then watched the green tracking stickers wink under the fluorescent light. Cash changed hands. The receipt curled as it printed. I smoothed it flat and tucked it into my folder. 2 to 3 days, sometimes sooner, Ms. Boyd said. Scan the QR for updates. I penciled her window into the margin of my notepad and stepped aside. The lobby smelled like cardboard and toner. A baby fussed the sound of a life that didn't know what paper could do. At the kiosk, I entered each tracking number and copied them into a grid date-time status. When the system dinged, acceptance. The word felt like a small door opening on hinges that would not lie. I signed up for text alerts and felt my shoulders drop a notch. Outside, the March air had a thin, bright edge. I walked toward the clubhouse, my folder pressed to my ribs like a warm book. June texted that she would meet me there. "You won't go alone," she wrote. Mr. Keating's message arrived as I turned into the parking lot. "Could you pop by to clear up neighbor concerns?" 5 minutes. I replied, "I'll come to the lobby. My neighbor will accompany me." The clubhouse lobby had citrus cleaner in the air and a television tuned to a travel channel with the sound off. Lila slid a visitor sticker toward me and asked me to write my name. On the printed agenda, someone had typed, "Safety and access concerns, guest parent of former owner." I read it twice, then set my pen down. June arrived, sat to my left, and placed her phone face up on the table, like a witness in plain sight. Mr. Keating began with the preamble that lives in every HOA appreciation for community standards, gratitude for patience, commitment to safety. A sheet of paper lay between us like a placemat. "We've had a report," he said, gentle, "lingering near the property, children unsettled." I kept my hands folded. My pulse ticked, but my mind stayed cold. "Please proceed," I said. Lila referenced the realtor's scheduling window and showing protocol. She slid a paragraph across the table with a highlighter line under vacant. June's elbow brushed mine, a small anchor. Mr. Keating asked whether I intended to contest. The yellow pad from yesterday lived behind my eyes. "I'll defer to counsel," I said. They glanced at each other. Lila began. "Our policy." I pulled a strip from my folder and laid it on the table, green barcodes neat as stitches. "The documents speak," I said. "Not loud, not sharp, just a key fitting a lock." Silence rearranged the room. Mr. Keating read the notice header, the words, Life Estate, turning his brow. He drew a line through Safety and Access on the agenda and wrote in pen title Matter Refer to Council. Lila corrected the notes on her tablet and without looking at me changed guest to my name. June's hand rested on my sleeve for a beat, then withdrew. We stood. No one asked me to sign anything. No one taped a label to my back. On the sidewalk, the breeze lifted a flyer from the realtor's box and set it clapping against the post. June and I watched it for a moment. My phone buzzed. USPS in transit out for delivery. It's moving, I said. Good? She answered. Back at the motel, I sat at the round table and opened my email. A message from a realtor's assistant waited. Please confirm the residence is vacant for showings this week. No salutation beyond my first name. I typed a paragraph, read it once, then sent it without an ounce of story. There is a recorded life estate interest. Notices of occupancy rights have been sent via certified mail with return receipt. Please direct all inquiries to Title Council. I will respond only in writing. Attachment addendum cover page. The motel AC thunked on and settled into a steady hum. I checked tracking again. One text chimed, delivered. The other read, notice left no authorized recipient available. I screenshot both and saved them into an album labeled House Mail. I laid out the navy dress on the bedspread. It had a simple neckline and sleeves that made me feel like a person and not a plea. Tomorrow we would sit at a long table with coffee rings and a stack of stapled wills, and someone would read sentences that carried the weight of days like bricks. I touched the locket at my throat and the hidden seam clicked against my thumb. June called to say she'd drive me to the reading. I'll wait in the lobby, she added. You don't have to, I said. I know, she replied. Before sleep, I opened my folder and checked the receipts in their clear sleeves. The green tracking slips lay together like twin leaves. I wrote the time of delivery in the margin. Then I rehearsed the 3 sentences, looking at my face in the mirror until the words belonged to my bones. Please proceed. I'll defer to counsel. The documents speak. Outside, a siren threaded the highway and was gone. The motel sign pulsed red through the curtains like a heartbeat too big for its chest. I turned off the lamp and let the hum hold me. Tomorrow I would not raise my voice. Tomorrow I would bring paper to a room that trusted stories. The HOA's printed agenda had a strike through my erasure, and on my phone a green checkmark blinked, delivered. The conference room smelled of old coffee and toner. Attorney Blake asked if we were ready before he pressed his thumb on the first page. Dana set a recorder between us. Name placards faced the center. I slid my manila folder beside the water glass. June sat just behind my shoulder, a quiet backstop. Across the table, Bram pinched his tie flat. Selene stared at her screen, thumbs ready to frame whatever came next. Blake read the baseline items. First, small bequests, the tools, the telescope, the books with our notes in the margins. The residuary estate, he said to Bram Calder. Celine's posture loosened by an inch. Bram exhaled and studied the table grain. I kept my breath even and watched Blake's finger move toward a stapled packet whose edges had turned the color of toast. He flipped to it. Addendum Life Estate and Occupancy Rights. The room thinned as if someone opened a window no one could see. He laid each brick of language in place, my right to occupy for my natural life. No lock changes, no constructive evictions, no interference with quiet enjoyment, mandatory disclosure of the life estate in any listing or sale. He read the recording reference and the date. Dana underlined once a blue vein on the page. Selene's mouth softened into practiced concern. Bram pressed his tie again. I folded my hands. Please continue, I said, surprised at how ordinary my voice sounded. Blake tapped a margin. There is also a remedial clause. If access is denied or locks are changed, the life tenant may seek injunctive relief fees, damages. He glanced up. My understanding is that locks were changed Sunday. We didn't know, Selene said. Voice turned on low. We were managing so much. The kid's notice was delivered yesterday by certified mail, he answered. It is now known. The vent hummed. My heart settled into the sound. Celine angled toward me. "Are you really going to hold us hostage in a grief house? Please proceed," I said. Dana flipped a fresh tab. I slid my slim packet forward a copy of the addendum, 2 green receipts with tracking numbers, a 1-page ledger index summarizing 40 years of payments and repairs, and a transcript of June's doorbell clip with timestamps. Dana stamped each page, Exhibit A through D ink landing like small gavels. Bram spoke to the table. "Mom, we should have asked more before we moved so fast." The sentence hovered between apology and fear. "I'll defer to counsel," I answered and left the room to hold the rest. Blake dictated in a voice designed to calm elevators. Email title and the listing agent. Potential cloud on title, hold pending life estate confirmation. Attach the recorded reference and proof of notice. Prepare, if needed, a lice pendens. Dana's keys pattered. The screen brightened with the subject line like a flare, without noise. The speakerphone chimed. Janet Pike, the agent said. Blake summarized the addendum and the lock change. "We request showings cease until keys are restored and disclosure added." Paper rustled on her end. "Understood," she said. "I'm pausing marketing now and notifying title. Professional, clean, no theatrics." The kindest voices I'd heard all week belonged to strangers. Celine recalculated, her face surprised concern, something like pity. "We'll make it right," she said. Bram rubbed the bridge of his nose and nodded as if counting. Blake set guardrails the way you mark a lane with cones. Keys restored within 48 hours. Disclosure must accompany any future listing. Inventory occurs on a schedule when the life tenant is present. No sales of personal effects without consent. All access communication in writing. Dana slid a yellow slip of dates to each of us. Chairs breathed as we stood. In the hallway, the carpet swallowed our steps. Bram lingered. "Mom," he said quieter. "I'm sorry. I thought moving fast would help the kids." He looked older than his father ever had the chance to be. "Ask now," I said, in writing. Relief crossed his face like shade. Outside, the late sun glossed the parking lot. Heat lifted from a white SUV. My phone buzzed title's email. Hold placed cloud on title until life estate disclosure resolved. Sterile words, merciful wait. June shaded her eyes and gave me a small smile that said, "We'll outlast this." At the car, I rested the folder on the roof and let the page edges cool in the light. Inside the pocket, the addendum lay square its seal, catching a thread of sun. I pictured a cylinder turning back to its old groove, a locksmith's hand steady on the wrench, and a child's drawing slipping from a box that never needed a price tag. I did not rehearse what I would say. I had already been given the only sentences I needed. I checked the mirror and found a face I recognized grief-wearing work boots. I drove away slowly. A flock of blackbirds stitched a moving line across the intersection. I waited, though the light was green. When the birds cleared, I eased through. In the motel lot, the neon was already warming pink as a bandage. Ruthie lifted a hand at the office window and went back to her crossword. In my room, I set the folder on the table and laid my keys beside it, old and new metal glinting like parallel lines on a page. The air conditioner rattled, found its rhythm. Paper was enough tonight. On the drive back, the agent emailed again. Marketing paused. Showings canceled. Keys to be restored within 48 hours. I saved the timestamp and sent June a small heart. The new key turned with a clean click and crayons rolled to my feet like the house remembered me first. Mr. Hoyt stood beside me with his tool bag, June at my shoulder with a clipboard, and Bram on the step pretending the porch rail needed studying. Celine held her phone like a badge. I kept my folder flat under my arm and nodded for the work to begin. Hoyt confirmed the email from Attorney Blake, read the scope aloud, and asked for a witness. June wrote her name in careful blue letters. Celine filmed the page as if a lens could make it kinder. I ignored the camera, answered each question simply, and watched Hoyt unscrew the scarred cylinder my husband and I had touched for years. Brass dust freckled the mat. No one raised a voice. Paper had already done the loud work. The new lock seated with a soft thud. Hoyt tested 3 keys, stamping tiny numbers into each head. One went to me. One he sealed in an envelope for counsel. One he placed on the table for temporary use by Bram with a signature and a return date scrawled beneath. Dana from the firm arrived long enough to collect the log and initial beside each line. Celine filmed that too, a movie of consequences she did not narrate. When the door finally swung open, a shallow box on the threshold slid forward and tipped. Crayon spilled in a bright little river, bumping my shoes, humming across the wood like bees without a queen. A folded drawing fluttered free. Tess's writing looped my name inside a heart next to a square house with 4 windows and a rosy sun. I lifted the paper with 2 fingers as if it were a leaf and set it on the mantel where dust had kept time. Bram's shoulders drifted toward me and then away. We gathered at the kitchen island. I opened my slim folder and stated the schedule 2 hours today. 2 on Monday, nothing removed without a checkbox and initials. Blake confirmed by speakerphone, his voice dry and steady like a ruler on a desk. Celine exhaled through her nose but signed the ground rules. Bram signed too, his pen clicking twice before it settled. June set a silent timer on her phone and took a chair by the pantry. I drew 2 simple columns, show and keep, and listed room by room. Wedding china show. Needlepoint pillow my mother made keep. Photo albums keep. Bram read initialed and passed the pen back without comment. I set aside my husband's watch for Tess at 18. Bram nodded and wrote his initials with care. We moved in a rhythm that felt like sweeping a porch after a storm, ordinary, necessary, mercifully dull. A chirp jumped from Celine's phone. She glanced, and her mouth pinched. On the glass, a neighbor thread linked the title hold and called her post misleading. She flipped the phone face down and smoothed the counter with one palm, as if crumbs might be the problem. No one spoke. A hairline crack is still a crack. We kept working. In the hallway, Bram picked up a photo of red dirt, puffing under a Little League slide. He ran a thumb over the crease where his helmet shadowed his grin. I didn't know about the addendum, he said quiet as a bench after a game. You know now, I answered. Sign here for the watch. He signed. His eyes stayed on the paper, then on the mantel where Tess's heart held our house together with a line of crayon. We labeled a carton drawers. I found a locket chain and slipped it into my palm. I left a suit tie draped on a chair for Bram to take when he was ready. June called a water break and reminded us of 10 minutes remaining. The timer blinked its final minute like a lighthouse. We closed the carton and taped it shut with one clean pull. By dusk, the lawn hummed with sprinklers. The realtor's brochure box sat empty, a plastic mouth, waiting for a story it could not sell. Janet texted that showings were paused. I replied with a single thank you to confirm. On the porch, I restated Monday's 2-hour window and the checkbox rule, then emailed the list to everyone so no one could pretend to forget what ink remembers. No threats, just lines. I locked the door. The new key lay cool and honest in my palm. Inside the house breathed regular and tidy, not weaponized. I slid Tess's drawing under my folder cover so the heart wouldn't bruise. Somewhere in the kitchen, the timer gave one last soft chirp and stilled. I walked down the steps without looking back. June walked me to the sidewalk, her arm through mine. Bram locked his car twice and stood with the door open, as if second thoughts might ride shotgun. You've always kept lists, June said. Lists keep promises from melting, I answered. Celine hovered in the entry, filming the porch light. The sprinklers ticked. My phone buzzed, USPS delivered, signature obtained. I saved the screenshot and texted Blake Keys logged. Schedule sent. Notice delivered. He replied, proceed, as planned. The words steadied me. At the curb, I repeated Monday's window and the rule that protects us: no item leaves without a checkbox and initials, even if it looks like trash. Okay, Mom, Bram said. It was the first time today he used my name without handing me a task, and it landed like rain after heat. We stood there, 3 adults in a house the evening, arranging us in a triangle. When I turned toward the motel, June squeezed my hand. You're doing it right, she said. I believed her. The folder was light, the key heavier, and inside the living room a child's sun held over a square roof, steady as a heartbeat. Monday's key turned the same clean way, and the house answered with dust motes and the small sound of boxes settling. June stood by the door with her phone timer ready. Bram signed the start time on the inventory grid I'd taped to the kitchen table. I set the ledger beside a pitcher of water. Read the ground rule. Nothing leaves without a checkbox and initials, and clicked the motel pen. Celine hovered at the threshold camera up. We began with the closet because closets don't lie. Shoes and pairs winter coats counted donate pile noted, keep pile logged. I spoke each entry for the recorder, and Bram initialed in a slow, blocky hand. June called minutes every quarter hour. Celine tapped her heel and watched my face for a reaction that never came. I kept my voice level the way bank foyers make you do. At the top tray of the jewelry box, my rhythm caught. The velvet had an empty oval where Harold's father's watch should rest the one we marked Friday to go to Tess at 18. I circled the line on the grid and said for the recorder item, not present 9:48 a.m. The absence was louder than any slam I'd heard this month, but my shoulders stayed square and my finger moved to the next slot. June slid a printout to me as if handing a handkerchief. "For your packet," she said. It was the HOA minute addendum from Saturday night and her signed affidavit describing the doorbell clip and the title hold that followed. In black type, it contradicted the weekend post about how we complied with everything. I placed the affidavit into a sleeve marked Exhibit E and let the paper sit where even the camera could see it. I opened my ledger and found the serial number for the watch in the margin where I'd written it years ago. I called a jeweler who keeps records for pawnbrokers in town. The clerk put me on hold, then came back with a careful voice a matching serial had been presented Saturday. No purchase was made. The piece was held for an ID mismatch and then retrieved. "Can you confirm that in writing?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "I'll email now." The email arrived while we were counting scarves. June let me use her printer across the street and the sheet slid out warm with a line that mattered. Serial number match. No sale. Held. Released. I added it to the folder as Exhibit F. I did not look at Celine. I read into the recorder clear and flat documentation received. No assertions as to intent. Chain of custody note preserved. It felt like closing a latch that had hung open too long. Back at the kitchen table, I stated this for the record. Jewelry lines are paused until counsel advises. Items logged to this point remain in place. No removals. Bram nodded his mouth a familiar boyish line I hadn't seen in years. Celine's jaw worked. I poured water for everyone and pushed the cup toward her because adults offer water when anger dries the tongue. Dana arrived mid-afternoon with a portable scanner. She stamped Exhibit E and Exhibit F with tidy letters, then left a property dispute form. On Blake's instruction, I called the Houston Police non-emergency line and requested exactly that a verification log number for property documentation. The operator read it back twice. I wrote it on the grid and repeated it for the recorder. No complaint, no accusation, just a number to anchor the facts. We returned to the primary closet. I found the locket chain Harold once repaired with a loop of fishing wire and left 2 suits for Bram that his shoulders might fill. June kept the room breathable, opening a blind an inch and calling a brief break. When I glanced at the mantel, Tess's drawing still leaned against the frame where I had placed it. The heart around my name hadn't slid. By late afternoon, the house took on that soft gold that forgives dust. I emailed Blake the day's packet, the inventory grid, with my not present note, the jeweler's confirmation, the HOA addendum, the affidavit, and the HPD log number. The subject line read what it needed to read: inventory item not present, documentation attached. I sent Bram a copy and slipped hard copies into a manila envelope I could hold against my ribs. On the porch, the evening insects rose in little commas over the hedges. June squeezed my hand before she crossed the street, and I thanked her for letting the printer hum in her quiet den. Inside, we set Tuesday's plan in writing keys for the storage unit clipboard at the ready signatures for any box that left a shelf. I added one line at the bottom, watch serial verified status unresolved await counsel. It wasn't an accusation and it wasn't a surrender. It was simply the truth we knew. Celine paused in the doorway phone at her side at last. "Are we done?" she asked. "For today," I said. 2 hours tomorrow. Same rule. Bram signed the stop time. I turned off the recorder and clicked my pen closed. The house settled with a sound like breath through a clean filter. I slid Tessa's drawing into a document protector because paper that matters shouldn't have to bear fingerprints. Before we left, Bram set the Little League photo on the counter and cleared his throat, then said nothing. When I locked up, the key felt like honest metal, again not permission borrowed. The email about the serial number sat on top of my inbox like a small, quiet gavel. I didn't strike it. I let it rest where everyone who needed to read it could read it, and where silence would not be mistaken for doubt. Mr. Ortega slid the clipboard across the counter and the key tag read B17, like it had been waiting for us by name. He scanned our IDs, copied each letter, my full name, Bram Celine's, then tapped a laminated rule, legal inventory, no removals. June signed the witness line. I photographed the sign-in sheet, the wall clock, and the brass plate on the roll-up door. Paper first, feelings later. Bram tugged the cord. The door rattled up and shook off a dry cloud. Bankers, boxes, a collapsed futon, 3 blue totes. We stood at the threshold until the light settled. I read the rule, as if to strangers list photograph initial. Bram nodded. Selena lifted her phone. We opened 2 folding tables and made a lane of order through stacked years. The top carton office misc held warranties, a dead router rubber-banded receipts. At the bottom, a manila envelope flap-tucked, keys, docs faintly penciled in the corner. 2 initials sat beside the flap, neither mine nor my husband's. I turned it over, photographed both sides, set it where every shot would see it. The habit steadied my wrists. We kept working because work makes a floor. June called out the time for the recorder I'd set on the table. Box 1 contents photographed, returned. A fireproof pouch lay empty. Bram hunted a small watch box and shook his head. I wrote neat as ledger print. Watch not present. 10:42 a.m. No accusation, only ink. I looked at the envelope again. Opening sealed envelope unit B17 witnessed, I said for the recorder. June moved closer. Bram rubbed his palms on his jeans. Celine crossed her arms. I eased the flap up. Inside a clipped stack in low ink gray. Subject line. Plan clean transfer, no interference. Dates 2 weeks before the funeral. Sender Celine's personal account. One thread CC'd Bram. Another included a Janet P. that wasn't our realtor. Paper doesn't posture. It just shows. I read one line under my breath and then out loud so it would live on the record. Once the locks are changed, she'll stop coming around. Another. No need to mention the life estate, nobody reads. Addenda. A third. If push comes, say safety. Not a sworn confession, but intention, with timestamps. The air cooled inside my chest. June set 2 fingers on my wrist the way nurses do when they mean steady. Behind the emails, alternate trust language draft. It tried to sunset my occupancy after 60 days to facilitate transition. Our recorded addendum copied from the bank box promised a life estate without a clock. I laid both pages side by side, photographed them with the unit plate in frame, then again with the day's newspaper cornered under the clips. Exhibit G1, G2, I said mostly to myself. Mr. Ortega came when I waved. Policy says I can note what I saw, not what it means, he said, gentle inside rules. He wrote the time and initialed a contents observed line. His presence scrubbed the air of argument. We finished the first stack because finishing matters. I labeled binders closed years of taxes, envelopes of photos. Selene kept her screen face down now. Bram lifted a tote of pillow shams and gave a tired half smile, the kind you give a small mercy. When the hour turned, we taped the manila envelope and wrote across the seam, opened in unit B17 witnessed. Bram signed beneath my name. Celine signed her pen, carving a groove. At June's kitchen, the scanner warmed like a small oven. Each page fed in with its own squeak. Files flickered into a folder with clean names. I emailed Attorney Blake B17 envelope contents confession draft plus alt clause. His reply landed in a minute. Hold. Do not confront. We will formalize exhibits and advise next steps. The period at the end steadied me more than any argument could. We drove the packet to Blake's lobby. Dana counted pages, applied a narrow bait stamp, and slid a chain of custody sticker across the top. Signed and logged, she said, handing me a receipt. I thanked her by name. There was a time I would have filled the quiet with a story about that unit and Little League banners. Today, paperwork would carry what memory could only bruise. Back at my room, I set Tess's crayon drawing on the folder triangle roof square windows, 4 stick people, my name inside a red heart that bled a little where the crayon pressed too hard. I texted Bram one sentence. Please review counsel's email in the morning. No lecture, no emoji. He is a grown man with a phone and an ache that still knows where to find him. I washed my hands and watched the motel soap trace pale lines, then vanish. I thought of the watch with a serial number of emails that sounded like a person practicing excuses in a well-lit mirror of June's fingers on my wrist when the room cooled of a draft clause thinner than a real promise. I thought of my husband's careful column handwriting and the way he used to say, let paper speak when people can't. Night settled. The AC hummed its faithful note. A train far off stitched iron into the dark. I squared the folder's corners like a made bed and set the motel pen across the top. On my phone, Blake's subject line hovered at the top of the thread, calm and immovable. It did not gloat. It simply named the next right thing. The subject line on Blake's reply. Proceed to formal notice of breach glowed on my screen like a porch light no storm could blow out. At Blake's office the next morning, I signed where the tabs told me to sign. Formal notice of breach and demand to cure the header read plain type steadier than any voice. Dana time-stamped each page, sent service copies to Cellini's counsel, and asked June to witness. Blake looked over his glasses. I said the only sentence that mattered, we'll let the papers speak. He smiled once the way an air traffic controller smiles when the runway is clear. By lunch, Title replied to Blake with me, CC'd. Listing paused. No showings. Leverage preserved his forward read a 2-word benediction. I didn't celebrate. I breathed. Doubt which had followed me like a smell thinned. I set my phone face down and watched steam lift from my coffee. Outside, the courthouse flag worked slow circles in the wind patient as a metronome. That afternoon, we sat inside a small city conference room that had hosted 1,000 private wars. The mediator, Ms. Crowley, set the rules, one voice at a time documents before feelings. Bram's hands were folded, knuckles pale. Selena's bracelets clicked. I kept my folder shut until the nod, then laid out Exhibits E through G to June's affidavit, the HOA minute addendum, the jeweler's email, the alternate trust clause draft, and the recorded life estate addendum. Blake aligned the 2 clauses in the center of the table like a teacher showing the difference between truth and a wish. Dates, signatures, the recording reference, he walked through each line with a mechanic's patience. The mediator drew a line under prior knowledge. Selina tried to speak. Ms. Crowley lifted one finger and gave her the kindness of silence. We looked at the paper. That was enough. Terms took shape the way a shoreline appears when water draws back. Restitution, not revenge. Compliance, not drama. Blake dictated and the mediator refined until each part clicked. 1, a written public retraction and apology from Celine. 2, reimbursement for motel night storage locksmith counsel. 3, return of all keys. 4, deletion of false posts and a corrected message acknowledging my rights. 5, strict continuing compliance with the life estate. 6, the heirloom watch returned or replaced at appraisal. 7, a seed deposit for Tessa's college fund. 8, supervised completion of inventory with me present. Pens moved. Initials stacked. The room felt less like a fight and more like maintenance. When it came time for the apology, Ms. Crowley asked Celine to read it aloud, word for word. I misrepresented she read steady in that practiced way people use when they'd rather be elsewhere. I changed locks unlawfully. I apologized to Maris. She looked up, not pleading, not daring. I nodded once. Bram cleared his throat. I chose not to look, he said. That ends today. No one answered. We didn't need to. We went to the jeweler Bram driving me holding the old appraisal. The clerk recognized the serial number before I finished. Papers shuffled. A small box arrived from the back with the caution of a nurse. He logged the number, had me sign, and slid the watch across with a soft scrape. On the sidewalk, Bram stared at the dial like it were a compass that finally found north. Tess will know where it came from, he said. She'll know why I answered and closed the lid. Back at my porch, Dana waited with an oversized envelope and 2 tamper seals. Keys went in each tagged and numbered to match the log. Celine placed hers without commentary. Bram added the temporary key we had issued for inventory. Dana sealed the flap, wrote the time, and handed it to me. By invitation, I said, not by assumption. Bram nodded. Celine said, understood. I walked the rooms before dusk, not to admire anything, just to be sure the house felt like a house again. In the living room, I framed Tess's crayon, drawing the little house, the stick figures, the heart around my name, and set it above the mantel. The watch went into the small safe with a fresh note to Tess at 18 from her great-grandfather. In the kitchen, I started a new folder labeled Settlement Completed and slid the receipts inside. The air was ordinary, which felt like a luxury. When the sun reached that lavender Texas hour, I watered the rosemary and listened to the muffled city the way you listen to a sleeping child. June waved from her porch, then let me have my first quiet evening in weeks. The porch light clicked on a small, steady star. My phone buzzed the first deposit into Tess's fund, posted with a clean confirmation period. I smiled without showing teeth. I did not invite Victory to sit. That chair is for something larger than pride. What I felt was simpler rooms, righted time, honored a life allowed to proceed at the speed of breath. Paper had done its work. People would have to learn the rest. Before I went inside, I spoke the way I'd speak to the women who find me in grocery lines and waiting rooms, the ones my age who ask how to hold their ground. Imperfect families learn in different languages, I said to the night and the doorbell camera. Mine finally learned in paperwork and pauses. I turned the knob, stepped through, and closed the door gently, not to shut anyone out, but to keep the weather where it belongs. I'm leaving you with this grief doesn't make you powerless, and love doesn't require silence. When family fails, you let facts be your backbone. Dates, receipts, boundaries. Speak calmly, write clearly, and keep what is yours without hate. In the end, paper protected my home, but courage protected my heart. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to defend your dignity with documents? Tell me below. If this story reached you, type 1 in the comments or share where you're watching from. If it didn't, tell me why. And if you want more true, hopeful stories, please subscribe to this channel. Your voice matters. Together, we help elders feel seen and set kinder rules at home, too.